Greetings tonight, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Tonight, I have a very special guest with me. Everyone say hello to Shawn Mckenzie. Also, his Elven name is Erurainion. And he will be talking to us because he has his PhD in environmentalism from McMaster University, Canada. And so he'll be telling us a little bit about Ontario, Canada, and their use of green energy. And we'll just be talking to you about some of the kind of upcoming things that are happening for America with us rejoining the Paris Agreement. And we're going to be talking about wind, water, solar energy, and a little bit of the thermal energy. And Shawn is going to be able to tell us a little bit more about it. So just to give you some more clarity tonight and give you an idea of what is in store for us in the future. So welcome, Shawn. It's nice to have you. My gebannen. Okay, can you hear me okay? I hope the sound is all right here. So if you can hear me, just say hello. Can you hear me? Uh-oh, I hope the sound is all right. Well, we are going to be talking tonight together. And so just give us a little bit about your background and your studies.
Yeah, hi everybody. So yeah, I'm Shawn. I finished my PhD a couple of years ago at McMaster University. I studied the carbon cycle. So this is the movement of carbon throughout the ecosystem into the environment, underground as well, using biological processes and carbon sequestration through photosynthesis. I looked at how it operates specifically in forests, planted forests in southern Ontario. On the side, though, I looked at environment in general, like policy, outreach, just working with the public. I've given plenty of talks and lectures to various groups on campus and to other groups that I've encountered. And I like to read a lot online about current events with the environment as well. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good intro.
Yeah, so, and one of the things that we were talking about is that to us, we definitely feel that, humanity is running a little late in this in terms of starting green energy transitions now, but it is better late than never. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So our general idea is that, yes, we are seeing some problems in terms of the Paris Agreement not holding some countries accountable. It's really going to kind of put a personal responsibility on those nations that join the Paris Agreement. And I'll talk to you a little bit about what it looks like. There's a really great documentary out on Amazon that I highly recommend to you all, and it's in the description if you want to watch it later. And it is, the actual name is called The Future of Energy, Lateral Power to the People. Because one of the things that you learn with green energy is that it's not going to be connected to the federal government in any way. It is going to put the power back into the local communities and to the local governments, in the idea that it is about basically coming together as a community and regulating the green energy movement. So that's kind of what the Paris Agreement is possibly pointing towards, is self-regulation. Now, Shawn, you as an environmentalist, and you see that it could be problems with that, because sometimes we can't hold those accountable, but we have to almost put our trust into these local communities and governments in order to see that green energy transitions can be actually made. Let's start with the very basics. Let's give a great foundation on just how does wind, water, solar, and thermal energy work in terms of how do we take wind energy and convert it into electricity, and how is that actually feasible? Because there's a lot of, I think, misinformation out there, and there's a lot of fear surrounding it that it won't provide enough energy, that we see that. Now, I have learned solar energy from personal experience actually provides all the energy you need. The solar energy is extremely efficient. But let's talk about wind first and go from there.
Okay, so yeah, here in Southern Ontario, actually, we have lots of these big wind farms. So basically what it is you have a turbine on a pole, so to speak, and it rotates with the wind. And what it's actually doing is it's turning these wire brushes. And the wire brushes are able to, they kind of wrap around each other. And that friction and that energy is just kind of harnessed within the turbines of these wire brushes. And it gets stored and is sent off to sort of this electrical station that can distribute it to where it needs to go. I've seen these, like one of our research sites, actually, it's a vineyard, and they actually have their own wind turbine. So, they can be on privately owned land. So this farmer wanted to go ahead and buy one and use it on his own land to power his operation at the vineyard. So
that's great. So you can completely take yourself off the grid, the electrical grid, in a way. And then do you have a generator that's attached to it so that when there's no wind, you can store that energy? Is it like solar energy too?
Yes, it gets stored in conductors. This is where it kind of gets a little bit beyond what I know, but that energy can be stored just like coal energy. When you burn coal, you can store that energy as well. So it's a similar system. It's just you're harnessing the wind instead of burning coal, and you're collecting that energy for later use.
And would you say that you can do a good job of powering up large communities with turbine and wind power?
Oh yeah, wind energy is one of the ones that's on the rise. I was looking at some curves online, kind of in preparation for our talk, and it basically wind energy came on board in 2004, and it's like going up exponentially since 2004. So they're saying by 2020, last year, it's like supplying 2.5% of the total global energy. And by 2050, it could actually reach 27% of total global energy could come from wind. So it's as we use wind energy and as the engineering and the science gets better and better and more efficient, we're able to capture that wind energy more efficiently, and it gets distributed out more efficiently as well. So
great news.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misinformation sometimes that it just wouldn't be enough power, but you have seen it actually do everything that it needs to do, that electricity can do, on its own and through the fossil fuels. Greensburg, Kansas, I think that this is worth mentioning. After the 2007 tornado that they had hit their town, they basically rebuilt all of Greensburg, Kansas with 100% wind energy, and they have been using that. And John Deere, the tractor company, the big tractor company, actually uses wind turbines for 90% of its energy to power their buildings there. And then the rest is just basically generated. But they had to have a whole new transition to to wind. So they're really using eco-sustainable energy there. And I think that that's a really great example where you can power whole towns and whole communities. This is not something that is not enough energy. I think a lot of people feel that there just won't be enough energy output, and that they'll be scared, they can't use their appliances all day, but that's not true, because we do have that reserve and that stored function of the energy too. And so you've seen that it does great things. Now, would you say that there is any kind of problems with it that you have noted?
I've read these articles about how birds sometimes hit them when they're on their migratory habit. And it's like, yeah, it does happen. There is some mortality from birds, but I've also read where they've done some comparative studies, and it's like many, many, many times more birds are killed from stray cats or hitting windows than actually are killed by wind turbines. So, if you're actually, and I think these are just arguments that people just put out there and make people scared of alternative energy or renewable energy. So it's like, if you really care about the birds, bring your cats inside or put things on your window so that the birds don't hit them, and, I don't know how much of this is actually being done. Yes, like I say, yeah, there is some mortality, but it's not a lot, of deaths that are due to the wind turbines. So it's a very small percentage of all bird deaths are due to wind turbines. I guess that's the main one that I've seen.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you said that, because I know that was a concern about, about the bird deaths. So that's good. The idea that it's really not as much as it is when they just hit a window just because they are just flying in the wind.
There's far more deaths from windows and stray cats. Stray cats is the biggest. I mean, it's huge. How many birds are killed from people letting their cats out?
Yeah.
Or stray cats.
Yeah, that cycle of life there. Well, that's great. I think that this is a really good way of just getting some clarification on that. Let's move to water, because we know that the wind turbines are basically going to be tall towers with some type of, windmill kind of apparatus. So what does hydropower, what does that kind of energy look like for a town or a neighborhood? What could that be possibly?
Well, I would like to go ahead and point out at this point that hydro is like the oldest power type. I mean, the Romans were using hydropower to turn windmills, to turn water mills. So this is really nothing new. It's just in recent decades, though, we've harnessed it as electricity to be able to go into a power grid. So they've been using hydropower for millennia. But anyway, getting back to the modern stuff, it's like in Ontario here, we pretty much, hydro is our main source of electricity. So in all of Ontario. So, and it supplies, if you look at a daily curve of electricity usage, hydro can satisfy at least 50% up to 50% of that curve. Okay. And then, we have some nuclear to kind of top it off a little bit more. And then we have natural gas for the really high peak period. And this is what our government's trying to do. It's like, between 12 and 4 p.m., we have to switch on the natural gas, because the other powers just aren't enough to cover that high peak. So what they're trying to do is get people to use electricity during the off-peak hours. So, because water is going to flow, it doesn't just flow from like noon to 4 p.m. Okay, so it's always generating electricity. and the capacitors can only hold so much electricity. So when you're in the off-peak hours, you have a lot of just extra energy that just can't be collected anymore because the grids are quote unquote full. Okay. So what happens? Well, this energy just kind of gets shipped out of the province. It goes to Quebec, it goes to New York. So water is always flowing and you're always going to have electricity from it. But it's like, it's just these peak hours, which are like 5 to 6 hours of the day where the hydroelectric just can't quite keep up. So, so this is where you as a, it's like, are you going to do your laundry at like 1 or 2 p.m.? It's like, no, maybe I should do it like after 6 p.m. or something like that, or earlier. So it's like, you make that choice so that you don't have to have the city switch on the natural gas. Okay, so, or bring that peak down and distribute it out so that way you're using hydroelectric power all the time. Because it's like, yeah, it's good that we can give our electricity to our neighbors, but it'd be nice to kind of keep it in the province and not have to spend consume CO2 and pollute the atmosphere and contribute to global warming. Because methane, okay, so the byproduct of natural gas is methane, and this is a very powerful greenhouse gas, much more powerful than carbon dioxide. It's like 30 times stronger than carbon dioxide. So, the less of that we burn, the better.
I agree. And I guess it would require communities to kind of work together in that way where they would use electricity at a certain time. And, there would be almost like curfews in that way.
Yeah.
To some people, that could be seen as limiting their freedom. But actually, I think that it's more, if you're looking at it as a collaborative project, to save the world and the environment, it actually could be seen as a really positive thing in terms of working together. So it's just a matter of kind of, I guess, communicating with each other and deciding when are the off-peak times, when can we switch that energy back over. So with hydropower energy, you have to have a movable water source around you, though, right? So
yeah.
You have to have a river or a stream or something that has movable water currents, right? So is that what basically is the only way that it would work? Or are there other ways that are more advanced technology that's about having hydropower without that running, the natural body of water?
Yeah, so that's another thing that maybe we'll get to it today. It's like a lot of these renewable energies or green energies are kind of associated with certain regions. So it's like, yeah, if you don't have a lot of rivers, well, maybe solar might be better for you, or maybe wind might be better for you. So it's like here in Ontario, it's always cloudy, and it kind of is in Chicago too, right?
Yeah.
So we don't really have a lot of solar energy here. So, but we have a lot of rivers, we have a lot of lakes. So hydroelectric works really well here. Norway, as I mentioned, Norway has so many rivers and lakes that it's like 96% of the Norwegian electrical grid is hydroelectric. So they really don't need much of any other types of energy because their hydroelectric satisfies all their electrical needs. So it is somewhat regional, but chances are there is a green energy for any region.
Right. It's about kind of molding your needs to the environment, which actually makes you more well connected to your environment, understanding, okay, so we are in a region where we're going to have more solar power energy, or we're in a region where we can use the water. So I like that. I think that it actually makes you more conscientious of where you live and the environment that you live in. I mean, it's going to force whole communities and cities to take a look at their environment in where they live. I mean, this is really about heart-to-heart connection with nature in that way. I really do feel. So it is really about where you are right now for hydro energy or the hydropower. So that's good to know. Solar energy we can talk about. That is pretty much the most efficient type of form of energy I've been seeing that's been used, especially in places like California where you just have a ton of sunlight. So like you said, it is really about kind of where you live in that way. Tell us a little bit about just like maybe the foundations of the science of solar cells and how they absorb the energy's light, and then how that spreads out and how it can be stored.
Yeah, so you have these solar panels that are kind of silicon based, and silicon acts as a very good conductor of electricity, and it's got copper in there as well, so copper wires. So it's able to absorb the sun's shortwave wavelengths, which have much more energy than long wave wavelengths. So that's getting into a lot of physics. So we'll just say, okay, so we have the sunlight, the short wave has a lot of energy associated with it, and it's able to be conducted through this copper wire as well. And sometimes I've seen some systems where they actually have water running through as well, and it heats the water, which can turn some turbines in a power. We don't see much of those anymore. I believe those were the older solar systems. But it's able to absorb those photons and store them as electricity. So that's how the solar panels absorb energy, and it converts it into usable energy. A lot of engineering here.
It is, and actually, I've been watching that documentary that's talking about the greener energy, and one of the things that it talked about was that you can have a small solar panel on everything. Basically, they can put it on everything that uses electricity, and then that is what can basically power a city. So there's a lot of hope in that direction with solar power panels. And one of the things that the documentary talked about, Mark Jacobson, director of Atmosphere and Energy Program at Stanford University, said that we believe that it's technically and economically feasible to repower the entire world's energy infrastructure for all purposes with renewable energy. Mm-hmm. Main limitations are more social and political rather than technical or economic. Fossil fuel industries are connected to politics, but we envision that these plans will result in 100% conversion to wind, water, and sunlight for all purposes by 2050. By 2030, we expect about 80% conversion, and what that entails is that by 2020, all new sources of energy will be wind, water, and solar. So a lot of the buildings in California, especially in Palo Alto, California, and Lancaster, California is the first city in America to mandate solar panels for all new buildings that have been built. So they fixed their energy costs and saved $225,000 a year. The mayor of Lancaster said, "I do know that we have become engaged in renewable energy as part of the solution to the world's increase in energy demands, and that well-being of everybody that lives here has been improved. Nobody intended it, nobody planned for it, but we feel it." So Lancaster, California is one of those places where they are completely like 100% solar panel now. So it is completely doable. I have personal experience with it because my father has solar panels all over his home. And so I grew up with that. And we see that it's like a $20 electricity bill a month, like nothing. It's very, very inexpensive to power the entire house. And they still use everything they need to, microwaves, all that. And it's really just about, the conserving of the sunlight and then being distributed, at night when they need. So this is something that can definitely be done. And we're seeing this transition. I want to talk about the I want to talk about the Paris Agreement in terms of, I'm going to read it out loud here for everyone. And let's see if I can go to share so you can see too. I have the PDF of the Paris Agreement that I think everybody should take a look at, especially Americans, now that we're part of that now. So hopefully you can see it all here. Okay, so the PDF, this is the Paris Agreement. There's 27 pages, United Nations, 2015. And as many of you know, we were signed out of it when Trump came into office, but now that Biden and Harris won the election and are now in office, we have rejoined the Paris Agreement. So here's what the Paris Agreement says. The parties to this agreement, being parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, hereinafter referred to as the Convention, pursuant to the Durban Platform for Enhanced Action established by Decision ICP 17 of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention at its 17th session, in pursuit of the objective of the Convention and being guided by its principles, including the principle of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in the light of different national circumstances, recognizing the need for an effective and progressive response to the urgent threat of climate change on the basis of the best available scientific knowledge. Also recognizing the specific needs and special circumstances of developing parties, especially those that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change as provided for in the convention. Now, what I like about that is that the Paris Agreement is basically to unite the nations in that idea of climate change, helping each other and helping these countries that are lacking water and are having a hard time finding, food and water. So this is a way of actually coming together and helping one another in this way, taking full account of the specific needs and special situations of the least developed countries with regard to funding and transfer of technology, recognizing that parties may be affected not only by climate change, but also by the impacts of the measures taken in response to it, emphasizing the intrinsic relationship that climate change actions, responses, and impacts have with equitable access to sustainable development and eradication of poverty, recognizing the fundamental priority of safeguarding food security and ending hunger, and the particular vulnerabilities of food production systems to the adverse impacts of climate change, taking into account the imperatives of a just transition of the workforce and the creation of decent work and quality jobs in accordance with nationally defined development priorities. And you can tell us a little bit about that too, Shawn, because you said that greener energy is actually going to provide more jobs. So we'll talk about that. Acknowledging the climate change is a common concern of humankind. Parties should, when taking action to address climate change, respect, promote, and consider their respective obligations on human rights, the right to health, the rights of indigenous people, local communities, migrants, children, persons with disabilities, and people in vulnerable situations, and the right to development, as well as gender equality, empowerment of women, and intergenerational equity, recognizing the importance of the conservation and enhancement as appropriate of sinks and reservoirs of the greenhouse gases referred to in the convention. So that's the methane gases that we're talking about and the carbon dioxide. Noting the importance of ensuring the integrity of all ecosystems, including oceans, and the protection of biodiversity, recognized by some cultures as Mother Earth, and noting the importance for some of the concept of climate justice when taking action to address climate change, affirming the importance of education, training, public awareness, public participation, public access to information, and cooperation at all levels on the matters addressed in the agreement, and recognizing the importance of the engagements of all levels of government and various actors in accordance with respective national legislations of parties in addressing climate change, also recognizing the sustainable lifestyles and sustainable patterns of consumption and production, with developed country parties taking the lead, play an important role in addressing climate change. And then it goes into the articles of what you agree with. So I think it sounds pretty good in that regard. We can talk a little bit about their visions, because what I'm understanding is that this is a way to try to end world hunger, poverty, and help countries that are lacking resources that, can help them survive. And the idea of providing more jobs so there would be less poverty. We can talk about that because you have found out some numbers that I think are really fabulous in that idea. In your opinion, how would a world of greener energy be better for us than what we have right now?
Well, but yes, I did find some numbers where green energy actually employs 10 times the amount as the fossil industry. So I have some numbers from 2019 because the 2020 numbers haven't been really published yet, but 900,000 people were employed in the fossil industry, whereas there's 9.5 million people employed in the green industry or the renewable industry. That's like 4% of the American workforce.
And where does that difference come in terms of, is it just because you need more bodies to work with the green energy industries?
Well, it's a very diverse field. Like what I was saying, you have the people that have to build the, let's look at wind energy. You have the people that build the masts. You have the engineers that are to convert the wind energy into electricity so that it can go to a station to be stored. It's diverse. It's you need a lot of people working in different parts of the renewable energy system, and there's like 7 or 8 different renewable energy types out there. Like there's geothermal, there's tidal, there's biomass, there's lots of other types of renewable energy out there. And these are, like we were saying with the governments, they're actually being subsidized by local and state governments or provincial governments and federal governments in many countries. So the money is there. The jobs, it's like, okay, you're an electrical engineer, let's put you to work on this geothermal project, for instance, or, it's like there's lots of places where people could be employed depending on what their strengths are. Whereas with the fossil industry, it's all kind of said and done. We only need this, and that's it. And it's not really, it's kind of already there. It's still growing, but not as much as green energy. Because remember, the population of the Earth is doubling, like, every 15, 20 years now. It's crazy how quickly the population is growing up. So all forms of energy are going up as far as energy consumption goes. But it's just the green industry is going up much faster. And there's a lot more jobs in it. And like you said, with the wars and the conflict, it's like, yeah, if you're a country that doesn't have a lot of oil, people aren't going to pay attention to you. However, if you happen to live in a sun belt, it's like, solar energy. This would be a great place to set up a solar panel array. Or if your country is located in an area where it's really windy, okay, so you could set up a bunch of windmills. So, or if it's kind of wet, hydroelectric. Or if you're near a fault zone, geothermal.
Yeah, if we can talk about that, since you did bring it up, and I know we were talking about it offline, but I did want to talk about that. Something I know, almost all wars, ever since the modern times, religious wars were fought in the past, right?
Yeah.
in modern times, wars are always fought after resources and land.
Yep.
So when we start to share resources in that way of sharing electricity, like we do with the internet, and we give to each other what we don't use, and we don't have this fight for fossil fuels, which is finite, and it causes all this greed, basically. Could you possibly see that this would be a potential to end those types of resource wars?
Absolutely. It's, a lot of the recent wars are being fought in the Middle East where there's oil, like Saddam Hussein with Kuwait. I grew up with that kind of in that era. So, but actually we're kind of moving into almost a new era. Wars are being fought over water and agricultural land now because climate change is changing so fast. So the focus of wars is actually going to be changing again because the climate is becoming so unstable. It would alleviate some of these lingering tensions with regards to oil, natural gas, and such. There was the Chechnya conflict a decade ago or so, where Russia was going into Georgia and some of those Transcaucasus states, Dagestan, because they wanted the natural gas in the Caspian oil fields. But having a more diverse energy network would alleviate some of this conflict. And that's what the Paris Agreement is trying to do. It's trying to get some resources to these countries that say, yeah, we want to reduce our emissions, fossil emissions, help us set up solar panels or whatever works for their region. And that would hopefully, it'll put people to work. So you're reducing the poverty so that they can afford food. So it's kind of win-win in situations. Of course, it might not work everywhere, but it would help make the world a little better place for many people.
Yeah, it definitely would. Greed is one of the things that, Tolkien talked about with that quote, without the hoarded gold and that greed, that the world would be a merrier place. So if we were not so greedy over these finite fossil fuels and resources, and we started to share resources, it would be a merrier world in that regard. Now, you said something about water is being fought over. Well, there's a great new documentary called Blue New World, I think, on Amazon, and it's about this push for technology to discover new ways how to create water, from filtered rainwater and all these other ways that we can have water. Like, you can actually, there's a true story. It's a wonderful movie on Netflix, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and it's about how he made a wind turbine be able to conduct electricity and then be able to create water for his droughted land. And so that is a very real implication of the future, in the idea that you can harness these elements of nature and create what you want and what you lack. And so there will be less of these kind of resource wars because we'll have this greener energy solution. And so I do see that's a great positive with the Paris Agreement in that regard. As you said, it is in its infancy, in the idea that we're not, there's no regulation. It's just kind of an agreement. And so everyone is being held accountable, but we're hoping that we as all adults, we would hold each other accountable. And that's kind of what is happening with a lot of these new greener, eco-sustainable companies. There's one that's really great. It's called Mosaic. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's been in Forbes. Mosaic is really interesting because a lot of banks, like big banks, are not getting invested in green energy, but some are. U.S. Bank, Citibank, and Warren Buffett actually invested $7 billion in solar energy. So these banks are starting, like the big banks and the economies are starting to jump on.
Yep.
They know, and they're getting involved in greener energy. So this is not something that is alien to, these big bank industries. Like, it's just that some banks are taking a little bit longer to get involved.
Yeah.
Mosaic is a company that actually will rent out. They'll put solar panels on your house and you just pay them back as you get the energy, because they're positive that they'll basically make their money back and profit, because greener energy is so profitable in the idea that it makes it's like a zero margin in terms of like how much you have to pay. Like some of these companies, they have nothing in their energy bills. And so it's really a win-win situation, isn't it? We should have done this a lot earlier. And that's what I keep thinking. But
yeah, well, we needed to come together, have the dialogue. And now companies are seeing this as, yeah, this is something. Okay. The numbers don't lie. We see the exponential curves going up in terms of energy uses for these different types of renewable energies. And there's like, okay, I want to get a piece of that pie. I'm going to invest a little bit, and I think I'll get like 10% or 20% or 10 times profit. So we're seeing these companies coming out, and it's like, okay, I'm going to invest in that, because they're seeing now that this is real. It's not like little fiddly high school projects anymore. I mean, green energy is real, and it's here to stay. Electric cars are real. They're here to stay. So it's like, we're not going back to 100% fossil. So people want to get in on that because there's money to be made. I mean, yeah.
There is. And I wanted to tell the listeners right now that something exciting to think about, and just so you have this information, there are going to be 100% renewable cities that are being planned to be built. And if they have not already started, there's 4 of them right now in the world. There's number 1, it's called Plan It, and it's in Portugal. And this is an idea of building a total eco-sustainable city using all the different types of energy resources, of natural green energy, and basically powering these future space cities in a way. The second one is Masdar City in Dubai. Some of you may have seen pictures of it. It's pretty advanced technology, and it's pretty neat to look at. Number 3 is Tianjin Eco City in Sino, Singapore. So this is a result of a collaborative project between China and Singapore to jointly develop a harmonious, environmentally friendly, and resource conserving city in China. And the 4th one is called Songdo in South Korea. So these are like future cities right now being worked on. And we don't have them in America, but I think that the transition to the greener energy, like we see in Greensburg, Kansas, and California, we have some places, and Ithaca, New York, too, I wanted to mention, they have also transitioned to 100% renewable electricity. That's what I heard. So there are some future plans right now happening, and they're really exciting. When you actually look at these plans, they're really beautiful cities. I have to say, greener energy is less of an eyesore than these fossil fuel, steam stacks. It's really beautiful to see, like, the way that they design the turbines to look, the hydropower. The solar panels can look very modern, and they can have nice design to them, and they seem to make everything look very modern and advanced, but still can look aesthetically appealing in a way that I don't think the fossil fuel industry ever thought of. When they built their huge fossil fuel burners, and with these huge smokestacks in the air. I mean, it just was not a good idea aesthetically, even just thinking about the beauty and the preservation of our environment. So these eco-sustainable cities look much more appealing. They're very beautiful. And when we use nature as a design, in a lot of these eco-cities, they're thinking of using these things called living buildings. And I wanted Shawn to talk to us a little bit about what living buildings look like, or what they can be described as.
Yeah, basically you have a building, and instead of concrete walls, you have plants growing. This is great because it actually keeps the temperature down, or during the summer and warmer in the winter. It acts as an insulator. We actually have a program at McMaster University where you can get a degree in green building, so to speak. So you become certified, and this is actually becoming marketable because we're seeing more and more green buildings. More and more localities are wanting green buildings because it helps with heating costs. It reduces the urban island heat effect. You might be familiar with that, where cities tend to be warmer because of all the impervious surfaces and the dark pavement, which actually kind of does weird things to the surrounding ecosystem. So yeah, green buildings are very good. They're energy efficient and kind of help bring nature into our daily lives. You know, if you have to go into a downtown, you know, here in the Great Lakes, quote unquote Rust Belt, you know, we don't see a lot of nature in downtown. So it's nice to see that we're seeing some headway on bringing more plants and green into downtowns and rejuvenating.
I just got a question here. That's a good one. But we still need AC, right? Air conditioning. So how does a living building happen with air conditioning?
Well, because plants are like 80% water, something like that. So they are able to transfer energy, right? So energy hits the leaves, causes the leaves to theoretically heat up. But because the leaves have stomata, they're able to remove that hot water, okay? So they just bring up cooler water, and then the hotter water exits the leaves through their stomates on little pores on the bottoms of the leaves. So this actually, in a way, cools the plant. It's called transpiration. And so basically the sunlight is hitting the plant, and then the plant kind of is like the air conditioner. So there you go. You really don't need air conditioning because the plant's kind of doing it for you.
That's absolutely true. Have any of you ever gone to a greenhouse and you've walked through? I mean, it's cooler in there. You can actually just feel there's like a cool air amongst these plants, and that's something that you can get to know. Like even in the hotter climates, it still can be cooling, but AC still can be ran through these other forms of greener energy. You know, we're just using the wind, the water, the solar to power the air conditioning. Is that correct, Shawn?
Yeah.
So that's basically what would happen. Also, living buildings have what I've seen in their structure, which I absolutely love, is trees, whole trees just growing out like in the center of them. And so it's basically a way to, what I like the description of a living building is that it's actually, it's not seen as just a cold structure or a foundation, but it's seen as a living organism that's part of the ecosystem that you just live in. And so it's like a living, breathing building that's part of basically the ecosystem and you. So it kind of actually, it kind of, I guess you could say it kind of like melts you into the building a little bit in terms of your understanding yourself as a living, breathing organism. And the building has walls of plants, and there might be a tree in the center. So then it's actually a living organism as well. Yeah, really interesting designs that are, I think, being implemented in living buildings. So a lot of these eco-sustainable cities will have what is called the living building structure. So I think that's really a great way of looking into the future in terms of, visions of just a better world. And a better world is a greener world. And I think that we both agree with that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of nuclear energy. Do you think that that has a part in our greener energy transition, or is it a need to actually transition away from nuclear energy completely so that we just rely on these other ways of having energy?
I mean, it could be used as a transition, but we all know that accidents happen. You have a lot of radioisotopes that are very dangerous. Look at Chernobyl, look at 3 Mile Island. So I wouldn't really consider it a green energy because you do have hazardous waste, and that waste has got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It also kind of does not very good things to the environment because you do have to have a water. It has to be built on the nuclear facility has to be built near water, and it actually heats up the water quite a bit. So this is going to disturb the ecosystem of that river or the lake or whatever. And it probably has a place for the transition as we try to get away from the fossil, but I would, we need to try to focus more on the renewable energies and try to transition away from nuclear energy. The great thing about nuclear energy is that it's very energy dense. You get a lot of energy for a little bit of fuel, and that's why fossil was so good for 150 years or so. But the green energies weren't very energy dense, but they're becoming that way. We're getting better with making solar panels to be more energy efficient, collecting more photons, which can then be converted into energy. So we're getting there, and we're getting there very quickly. So we can get away from these more dangerous fuels and go strictly renewable. But I think we still got a couple more decades to go. I think 2050 we'll be getting there, and by 2070 we'll probably be 100% renewable.
Yeah, and two things about that. Nuclear waste is not being managed in a very wise way right now at all. Nuclear waste is really just kept in barrels or tubs, and then they're buried underground, or they're kept,
mountain.
Yeah, or they're kept in confined areas. So we literally have a world with containers of nuclear waste that can mutate our ecosystem and the organisms around it. So it's really not wise to just depend completely on nuclear energy because of the danger that it does provide for the environment. Green energy has absolutely no danger to the environment. That's what's so wonderful about it. Would you say that there's no danger in using green energy? Renewable?
It's definitely better, but it does disturb ecosystems. Like if you build a hydroelectric dam, you have to be really wise in, where you build, make sure it's efficient. If you can, try to, have another channel for the fish to go upstream or downstream, or amphibians, or whatever the case may be. Solar is pretty safe. The problem is, make sure that the panels get recycled because there are quite a bit of toxic elements in the panels. So it'd be good if they could be recycled or, responsibly.
Yeah.
Turbines had the issues with the birds that I mentioned, but it's I think they're playing it up more than as a hazard than it is. But in general, yeah, like you say, it is better.
Yeah, it's better than having vats of nuclear waste just kind of sitting there underground. Or
yeah, I mean that's just terrible.
Oh, the future generations are going to have to figure out what to do with those barrels. They're going to have to learn how to dematerialize atoms so they can just get rid of it.
It would require a lot of energy because the decay products of of the radioisotopes, they have thousands to millions of years. So
Yeah.
Until they get to lead. So lead is kind of the final stable product, but they have to decay through quite a bit of what they call daughter isotopes to get to lead. So so what they do is they kind of bury them in Yucca Mountain and hope that there's no earthquake or something like that to bring them to the surface. Yeah.
It's such a backwards idea, but I mean, I get what they're thinking. It's just, I know that we're going to look at that years and years from now and be like, that just was not a good idea. So it is really good that we are doing the green energy transitions. Personally, since you live in Ontario and you said that there's the green energy that you have been part of, Canada has been part of the Paris Agreement too. What kind of personal sacrifices or compromises do you think people need in order to prepare themselves for the green transition?
Not much. Just what would help it along is support it. If you're looking to buy a new car, look at that hybrid. The prices are coming down a bit more because when you buy a hybrid, you're supporting that industry, and so that they can make better hybrids. So yeah, there is a little bit of an issue when you buy a hybrid because it's got a lot of the rare earth elements. But what we're seeing is that these engines have a very long lifespan. So in the long run, it's actually better because there's much less waste. And hopefully, and that's the thing. These engines are still going. These batteries are still going. And we really don't know what the lifespan is yet because they just kind of keep going. And electric cars have been on the road for like 10 to 12 years. So it's like, are they recyclable? Well, that's where we hire people. We hire the engineers. We hire the environmentalists to come up with ways to recycle these, because eventually they are going to need to be recycled or broken down so that they can be reused somehow. So this is why we have all these jobs.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a great point, the idea that they will last longer, because I also heard that you don't have to get your brakes or, like the normal things in a gas guzzling car, you have to fix, like, the oil change, the brakes and things like that. In an electric car, you don't have those issues. They last a lot longer. So that helps with the recyclable idea, because it's like you don't have to throw your car out as often.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is still going to be some like maintenance though, but you don't have to replace the gas tank and things like that. So like the carburetor, because there is no carburetor. So support the industry where you can, right? If you don't have green energy in your community, talk about it. Hopefully, it's like Hamilton has a agency, Environment Hamilton, so you can write to them. Or if your city should have something similar where you can, get it out there. It's like America used to be the leader in climate change research and climate change mitigation and green technology. They still kind of are. They look at the United States. Yeah, that image may have been tainted a little bit, but it's coming and it's there still. It's getting better. And I think that the world will look to America again and be like, yeah, what have you got? Because you got the best universities, you have the great engineers. So I think people are going to be looking to America again, and I think we're going to see a boom in the green industry in America. It still is. I mean, it never really, it had some setbacks, but it never really was snuffed out. So the hope is there. Lots of jobs. as I said. So yeah, just keep moving forward.
And just understand that it doesn't really impose anything on your own life. You'll be able to use everything that you use.
You don't have to change plugs or anything. It's just, it's the same, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. When I look at my father's house, like it's exactly the same. It just runs through solar energy and then through a generator that conserves the energy, I guess. But that's it. So it's really a very simple transition for all of us. We don't have to really do any type of sacrificing. As far as personal curfews go, you said that you did see that in Ontario. Is that something that we would see in our local communities in America?
Well, it's not a curfew. They just, the most we get notices that say, and what they do is we actually get charged more for every kilowatt hour that you have between like 12 and 4 or something like that. So, and that's mostly during the summer because that's when all the air conditioners are going, when they have to switch the power type of the grid over to natural gas. But that's just a choice that you can make for yourself. Tend to, if you have an electric car, charge it at night, because the stress on the grid is going to be lower. I don't know if, I kind of doubt there'd ever be like a curfew, but you just might get charged a little more if you use more energy during the peak few hours, mostly from like 10 a.m. to like 4 or 5 p.m.
So they would basically just penalize people that maybe didn't go along with the agreements to, to conserve the energy in the certain hours that they need. But that's going to be dealt with locally.
Yeah, that's not Paris. Okay, this is what's happening here locally. Yeah, in the city.
So it's really just about your in city that you live in, and then you would basically get notices of when you should be using the energy, when you shouldn't, and that's kind of how you all conserve together. So that's really great to know.
And it's just kind of changing your thinking as well. It's like it's better for the earth if you treat the earth more gently by doing this behavior. So,
well, that's something that I've seen. It's a remarkable, I think, a proof or evidence out there that when a community changes to greener energy, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, everybody just experiences this sense of well-being. And it's because you feel that you're part of a greater solution and you're taking care of the environment, and you quite literally are in flow with the environment, and you could feel like you're living in harmony with it. And that has an amazing effect on us mentally, and so I believe that that's the secret here, that when humans transition to greener energy and get back to using the available resources and getting it connected to the land again, then they will feel happier, more positive about life. There will be a renewed interest in living and what more can be developed together. I just see this as a huge game changer. This is really going to move us into the new age that we have been talking about. We cannot do it without green energy technology. So those of you who, you want the new age, but you also have fear about green energy technology, you have to somehow merge the two together and see that there really is no turning back, as you said, Shawn. We now are entering in a no point of return in terms of green energy. I mean, companies have already done it, and they're seeing positive benefits of it. This is not something that it has been negative in people's lives at all. So I encourage people to do their own research. I left a link for the Amazon video that you can watch, because I really highly recommend it. You'll learn a lot. And it's just a really great eye-opening, look at some of these communities and these cities that have already done it. I want to name a few cities and just kind of give a shout out right now to those that have already transitioned. This was as far as in 2015, but there are some notable here. So cities in the world that have achieved 100% renewable electricity by the year 2015. So this is, 5 years ago, 6 years now, but this is just kind of a glimmer of basically like where we're headed as a world. So Iceland, with their spirit of the elves, they are 100% renewable energy, Iceland. Monte Tringo in Cape Verde, they are 100% renewable energy. Los Gavitos, Colombia, they are Palo Alto, California, and Lancaster, California. They're doing it. Greensburg, Kansas, way to go for rebuilding your city after a horrible tornado. Extremadura, Spain. I hope I said that right. It's Extremadura, Spain. Kronprinskenkog, Denmark. Darchensheim, Denmark, and Shona, Denmark. So lots of places in Denmark are doing it. 40,000 people in rural China are doing it and are part of this transition, and 60,000 villagers in Bangladesh, India, they're doing it as well. So there are some remarkable changes, and a couple in Italy as well to mention. So there are already these movements towards greener energy, and so this is really the key to the future in terms of happier humans, more spiritually connected. It really is about connecting to the planet and to the planet's needs, and being very conscious and aware of what we use and what we take from the earth and how we replenish or give back, and leaving as less of a carbon imprint as we can, but still being able to use the benefits of the earth with the sun and the wind and the water. So I think it's just nothing but positive visions for the future in this regard. And I'm very happy that America has taken steps to work towards this again. I think that it's a really great vision for, I guess, the future that we have in mind. I wanted to say that there is an issue that you said, that in terms of we need to prepare ourselves, that we're still going to have climate change. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so even if we turned off all of our carbon emissions tomorrow, there's still going to be warming taking place. And this is because the Earth system it's just not used to having this much carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in the system. For instance, the oceans are much more acidic now because of all the carbonic acid. Because when the ocean absorbs CO2, carbon dioxide, it absorbs it as carbonic acid, and that's dissolved in the ocean. And the oceans cover like 70% of the Earth, and there's so much, it's perpetrated even into the depths. So even if we turned off all emissions, the plants are going to absorb it, but you're going to have the ocean, which is in equilibrium with high concentration in the atmosphere. It's going to come down, but the ocean was acclimated to that high concentration, so it's going to be doing all this outgassing. You're going to have a lot of carbon dioxide leaving the ocean. So you're not going to see a decline in the global warming because the ocean, there's just so much of it locked up in the ocean right now. And it's going to be liberated as the carbon dioxide comes out of the atmosphere. So we may not see temperatures come back down back to the pre-industrial temperatures for a long time. I mean, I've seen some papers where they say it will be 1,000 years. So for nature to keep up and remove all that carbon dioxide that we've been burning, for 150 years. This has been going since the birth of the Industrial Revolution in Europe in 1850 or so. So there's a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that's got to be removed. So we're going to continue to see these extreme events. Like last year, there were $190 billion worth of damage from the top 10 events in 2020. $190 billion just for the top 10 events. That's the kind of climate catastrophe we had last year. I can go through them all here if you want. I wrote them down. Hurricanes. We had 6 major hurricanes, 30 named storms. 7 of the names will probably be retired.
And Shawn, tell us, I mean, I understand hurricanes are attributed to climate change, and how is that so? If you want to just tell my viewers here.
Because of the energy, unequal distribution of the energy. So the energy hits the ocean, and the oceans are warmer now because the energy is not able to escape back into space because the carbon dioxide traps it. It's called radiative forcing or radiative absorption. And that energy is not able to escape back out because of the carbon dioxide and the other greenhouse gases. So we have all this energy stored up in the equatorial region, and it's not able to even distribute to the poles, which is where it wants to go. It goes from high energy to low energy. And the poles are warmer now. So there's less of a trend to disperse that energy away. So it just stays near the equator and gets stronger and stronger, which is why we had all these category 4, we had 6 category 4, category 5 hurricanes last year because it's just not being distributed away, and the oceans are just so warm. We had all the fires last year in California and Australia. And there's this, I never heard of this before, but they're saying that there's zombie fires now. And what this is the fires are burning underground. And it's like you think it's out, but it's going to come back. It continues to burn in the ground over the winter, and it's going to come out again. This already happened in Australia because they just went through their winter and it's summer there now. Some weird things, there was the strongest typhoon ever, Typhoon Goni in the Philippines, 195 mile per hour winds. Can you imagine? $32 billion from a flood in China back in June last year. And ice cover in the Arctic is record low. They're saying that the Arctic is going to be completely ice-free by 2050. So, and these are just going to continue. All this is going to continue because of all the carbon in the atmosphere. So even though we're switching over to renewable energy, the climate chaos is going to continue.
Yeah, we have to prepare ourselves that this is good. This is an investment into the future. And this is definitely something that humans need to do to save their planet. But at the same time, it's also a little, it's not that it's too late, because it is better that we're doing something now. But we do need to prepare ourselves because the ice caps are melting, and that's not going to stop. It's something that is going to happen. So all the coastline cities are basically going to be underwater by 2050. Is that what's going to happen?
Well, there's some things that we don't really know for sure. So, for instance, the thermal expansion of water could play a big role in this. It's when, as the oceans are heating up, the distances between water molecules is actually getting a little larger. So this is causing the sea level to rise just by heating the ocean. And then you're going to have all this extra water coming in. So we don't know how much the sea level will rise, but I mean, given that 70 to 80% of humankind lives on the coast, there could be some mass migrations because you're going to have big storms, right? The typhoon and the hurricanes. We're going to see climate refugees. We already seeing climate refugees.
Yeah, they don't have water and they're running to other countries that do. And I mean, that's just one example, but yeah, you're right. The climate refugees is going to happen. So we do need to prepare ourselves, because although this is a great investment into the planet, there is still going to be some changes. And I think that was important to talk about tonight. So how, in your, I guess, in your opinion, how do we prepare ourselves for this change?
Well, it's going to depend where you are. Like here in Ontario, we're fortunate. We don't have wildfires yet. We don't have, I mean, we have some kind of strange weather with heat waves and such, but we're fortunate. But a lot of places aren't. So, like if you're on the coast, you may have to move, depending on how close to the coast you are. If you're in a dry area, it may get drier, so water may become a concern. But they're actually saying that areas like the Mississippi Valley are going to experience more flooding because it's not snowing as much. So you have more rain during the winter, more storms during the summer, so more floods. So it's going to be different depending on where you are. So it's hard to, but hope goes a long way. But that's what a lot of governments are working on, is trying to come up with some climate resiliency plan. And, some countries and some provinces are declaring climate emergencies, which is going to open up funding for people that are suffering because of the climate crisis, because they're happening today. They're happening. We think, we're going to have big storms in the future. Well, guess what? It's actually recent past, immediate past, and present. So these things are happening now.
Yeah. And that's basically what the Paris Agreement is about, really. It's that kind of national or global emergency that's basically being called right now. And, you're in Canada and you're part of the Paris Agreement in that regards. Would you say that it's more positive being part of that, or do you think that it would have been better to be individual, or is it, like, what do you think?
It's not, you can't, this is a global problem. You can't go at it alone. The Paris Agreement is not perfect, but it's better than nothing, and it opens the dialogue up for intelligent conversation, and we can sit down, discuss solutions. Solutions are going to be different for every country depending on what issues they're facing, how much money there is, but that's part of the Paris Agreement, is to help get money to where it needs to go, help to get these projects going, to make these countries more climate resilient. So yeah, it's definitely a benefit, but it's not perfect, like anything political or anything organization is not perfect, but it's better than nothing.
But the idea behind it, you're saying that it actually is the solution, because it's a global
issue. It is a global problem, yeah.
This is not something that each country can just kind of be, I guess, like left alone to figure out. This is something that we all as a world have to come together about. So it's a step in the right direction in that regards, that it's kind of I know people are afraid of globalization, that word, but globalization to me means coming together to fix the world solutions, the world problems, and come up with these solutions together. So that's why I'm not afraid of that word in that way. And part of that globalization and that idea is about greener energy and fixing, the issues that we have now with the environment because of human consumption. Because if you really think about it, that's really all it is. It's just that humans have moved into cities with industrialization, and now this is exactly the seeds that have been sown in a way. They're there now for us to deal with. And so I know I feel more confident, I guess, like living on a planet now that is even looking in that direction, that is even thinking about the environment in that way. So it is better than nothing, as you say. So that's good. And when you guys joined it, when did Canada join the Paris Agreement?
Well, April of 2016 or so. That's when most of the countries joined. Pretty much everybody signed right away. There's still a few countries that actually haven't formally joined, but these are countries that are kind of like falling apart anyway, like Yemen and Iraq, a few places. But most of the countries joined when it first initiated. I think the United States was the only one that formally withdrew, but they should be back in February. I believe that's when it'll take effect.
Yeah.
But this is a now problem. We need to deal with this now. It goes kind of back to Lord of the Rings with Frodo and the ring, right? So it's like, what do we do with the ring? We can give it to Tom Bombadil, or we can send it over the sea. No, this is our problem. We need to deal with it now. So that way, the people that come later will have good soil to till. I believe that line's in Lord of the Rings too.
Yeah, I don't agree with Elon Musk with his plan A of going to Mars instead.
Well, no country can pay for that. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, it's great. It looks great on paper, and I'd love to read it as a novel, because we're not going to go there. Dune's not going to happen yet. We still got some time.
And just aesthetically, I just love Earth much better. I mean, Mars is just not the planet that I would.
If you like red rocks and red dust, you'd be at home, because that's all that's there.
So let's save this beautiful Earth, because this is a truly remarkable planet, and there's very few of them like this in the solar in the galaxy, in terms of the way that we are structured here, which causes a lot of envy from outsiders, but that's another story. But it's just about really us coming together, and really, like you said, dealing with it now. Now we have the ring. We're going to take it to Mordor. We're going to get rid of it so that we can move forwards, or are we just going to pass the ring over to each other? And so the countries that I think that have signed with Paris Agreement, they understand.
Pretty much all of them. All functioning countries have.
Yeah, they see the urgency. They see the numbers. They've listened to the scientists. So the countries that haven't, like you said, they have been isolationists in that idea. Like, they think they can do it on their own, or that they don't want others' help, or they just feel that it might economically be a hardship for them. But what actually it seems that the Paris Agreement is that it's about helping each other out. And so I don't think that it is an economic hardship. I think that it actually is better for those countries, like you said, that were falling apart. I guess it's just a matter of trust, really, because they're not trusting that this actually could be a viable thing for them. And I think that that's what America had an issue with, too. It was this distrust in that, and then just trying to rely on ourselves. But we are slowly coming to the realization that we need one another, and that we cannot do this alone.
Yes, it's too big for one country. We all need to work together.
I think that's a beautiful spiritual truth, too, that no man is an island in that regard. And it also works that way in the environment as well. That, when you think about sustainable communities, and if you want to go back to ancient civilizations and past that lived off the land, there was not a sense of independence. Like, you could have the individuals do what they want on their own time, but there was a sense of collaboration and cooperation, of working on the land together. And and I think that is what's being brought back, that was missing. That has been missing from the industrialization period, because everything became factories factorization, and that kind of took out that collaborative approach. And everything, you became like a cog in the machine, like an individual cog in the machine with the industrialization period. And instead of looking at things as like an actual ecosystem, like one organism helping each other grow and, working together. Yeah, we're entering in a whole new age where we're actually getting back to this ancient wisdom that people of the land have been part of for a long time, and we're bringing that back again. But now we have some big problems because it's almost like too late that we have done this. But it's good news for, my elven soul and those of us that are fays. I think we can feel maybe happier to live presently in a time where we actually are looking towards the environment and being more conscious of our imprint on it. And I think that is, that makes me happy about 2021, being part of it. So let's see. I think that there has been some great conversations on the side of just kind of side-eyed a little bit going on here. But yes, there has been a lot of development in terms of this. Oh, I like Peachy Fruit's comment here. It's also it's just about adjusting to a new normal, which could already been tested on us. We are resilient and we can make it without plastic bags and gas guzzling cars. That's very true, Peachy Fruit. It's just like that small little step, like Chicago got rid of, they have a tax on plastic bags and plastic straws. Restaurants can't give plastic straws. So it's just like those little things that seem to be moving us in that direction. And yes, I mean, to some people it might be inconvenient, I don't have a straw with my milkshake. But I mean, these are just little small sacrifices that we each make in order to contribute to the planet more, because we really are kind of running out of time in that regards. I know this is not really about green energy, but Shawn, can you tell us a little bit about, just while I have you, in terms of what do you think our solutions are going to be for the landfills that we have right now?
Well, it's, I'm not sure what they can do with what's already in there, but yeah, consumption is a big problem. All the plastic, I'm seeing more and more, and sometimes I post this in the Guardians group, where some company switched to plant-based packaging. So the packaging actually biodegrades. So when you do put it in a landfill, it just turns into soil. Because if you throw away like a plastic straw or plastic anything, it doesn't become soil. It doesn't decompose. It becomes smaller and smaller plastic, and then it eventually gets into the groundwater. And you're going to find it in drinking water even, or in lakes, or in fish, or in, seabirds eat it. It's going to come back. And so, yeah.
Or placentas.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah. I didn't know if I wanted to mention that, but yeah.
I think that's a message that we really need to listen to. They found the first plastic pieces, like I guess in 5 women's wombs. I think it was the number 5.
Yeah.
So hospitals are actually saying like, okay, like now you're having plastic in your body. Like that's how bad it has gotten. So all of us need to make that switch, because we really have to just completely stop that production if we can. And like you said, just go to plant-based materials. The technology is there. I have seen some remarkable things. I've seen on Amazon, there's plates and cups and silverware and all that. Well, not silver, but like, actual utensils made out of bamboo and other types of plant-based materials. So the switch is there. I mean, we just really have to kind of turn it on within ourselves. And as far as the landfill problem goes, it seems that that is a problem that is here to stay, but we can stop filling the lands now because we can't burn that away because that creates the methane gas. So there's really no other way to get rid of I can think of like advanced technology in the future, maybe where we could dematerialize it completely and, get rid of it, maybe digitalize it, put it on a computer instead, but through laser beams. But that's not what technology we have right now. Right now, we have landfills just kind of growing and getting larger. So every one of us need to think about that in terms of our consumptions. And then the energy output can be really resolved through the greener energy movement, like we're seeing with the wind, water power, hydro, geothermal, all of that. So it is really just about what region you live in and then utilizing basically the elements, the environment that you have. So I think that it would be a really great thing because it's going to make people be more aware of their environment. And we really do need to just concentrate and focus on kind of backtracking a little bit and getting away from all of the consumption that we have had in the past and moving forwards and looking towards, a brighter future, but also being prepared for some of the irreversible damage that has already been done. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. It's it'd be the new plant-based quote unquote plastic, I'll call it. It's can't keep up with the consumption, so we're still consuming more and more plastic every year, despite the measures that we've adopted. But if we can get and that's the thing, that's where you come in, where it's like, if you can buy, this milk or almond milk or whatever that comes in a plant-based carton, buy that, because it's you made that decision. You can feel good about saving the planet.
Yeah, and it's really just about just being a conscious consumer, and because companies will put on there plant-based, or this made with recycled materials.
Yeah.
Look for those things that say that, and the more that you have in your house, well, the more effort that you're putting towards in that idea. Like if you have more recyclable, reusable things, then you don't have to feel so much as part of the problem, which actually can relieve you a lot, in mentally and emotionally. So I think that it's a really great thing. I wanted to say Peter Luck had a great comment. The Fae are going to come close to humanity. The new age is coming. Earth, air, fire, water, the elements going back to nature, living naturally and simply and plainly. I agree. I definitely agree. And I think that the Fae energy is coming back, and we're seeing that in so many people that are just being really conscious and aware of the environment, and just bringing that into awareness for others. So that's what Shawn Mckenzie here, Erurainion, is doing and will continue to do as you've gotten your PhD. So it's just wonderful to have you on my show tonight to talk to everybody. Is there any last questions? If you have a really important question for him right now, please put it on the bottom. I'm just going to give you a second if I didn't get a chance to go back up there. But yeah, that would be wonderful if you want to ask any other questions while I have him on here. And then Solovi says being conscious of where your food was grown is important and buy local. Yes, definitely. Definitely. And because the farm industries too, they are huge pollutants, huge. So they're going to have to transition to greener energy. And they're also, I know a lot of people are talking about free range farms and things like that too, to get out of the industrialization of meat, because that's basically what has happened.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Meat. Well, the meat industry accounts for like some 20 to 30% of emissions. So and it's not just the transport of the meat, but it's like methane production from the animals, and growing the crops to feed the meat. So it's actually pretty huge. So if you can, transition to eat less meat, or to and plus it's healthier. This meat's not really that good for you.
Yeah, definitely. If you can eat less meat, you are helping the environment, because you're putting less of a demand on the the meat industry. Going vegetarian or vegan even is a huge help. So decide what I guess you can contribute and do it. Start today. Look around your house and see what you can do. Look at your life and see what you can do. If you can buy that hybrid electrical car instead of gas guzzling car, do it. If you can, and they are less expensive. That's what I've seen. Electrical cars are actually less expensive sometimes than gas cars. As far as some of there. And solar panels, there are companies that will loan you the money, and they will help you with that. It's just a matter of doing research. I have found on the government website of our American government, there is now green energy job postings. So they're looking for people to work in the greener energy industries now. So, get out there if you want to contribute in that way, and if you're looking for a new job. I know that Biden, he stopped the Keystone pipeline, which is a huge no to the oil and the gas, to say we're not going to run that line anymore. And it caused a little bit of problems because, some of these workers have lost their jobs. But there is a promise for the green energies to open up more jobs. And you showed that with your amount of numbers that you provided earlier. And just the idea of, just logically, when you think about it, there's so many different hands involved in greener energy, in engineering and all of that, rather than in just coal and oil mining, which is basically, like you said, it's a lot less, I guess, facilities needed in that production. So it's really just about each of us kind of taking that responsibility and just, going for it. How much do we want to contribute to helping the planet and the environment? And each one of us doing just a little bit energetically is a lot. It's a big effort. So even though we are still going to have some consequences of the actions of humans in terms of their consumption and their carbon emissions, it is very important that we're making this move now, because just energetically, like on a spiritual level, our intention, our will, and our focus in that direction will accomplish what we want to see for the world. I really do believe, a little bit of magic is at work here, if you want to think about it that way. We are really kind of focusing our attention and our will towards a better planet, and we will see results of that. And it just is a matter of believing that and trusting in that, because this is the future, and this is the direction that we're going. So as Shawn said, get on board, because we're not going back. All right. Is there any other last comments that you want to make? I didn't see any other questions for you, Shawn, so I think we're good. And then Many War said, yeah, they were hurting many Lakota people too. Yes, a lot of the indigenous people.
Yeah.
Well, that's the wonderful thing, is that the indigenous people. So I really like this. Like, I've seen it in the Democrat Party's articles, and I see that in the Paris Agreement too. Indigenous people are actually being looked at in a respectful way. And so that shift in focus to the indigenous people that have been living off the land and that have this sacred connection to the earth is being brought back as well. So that is important. And I think that that's a really great comment that you made there, because it really is about shifting our focus back to the indigenous people, which we have lost focus of, because with modernization, you know, people have basically left those tribal communities and have moved into these modern rural places, but we've lost an ancient wisdom. But I think we're getting it back, and we're getting it back with the fairy wisdom too. We're getting it back with the indigenous people that have lived off the land. So I think we're getting back on track. I have a really great feeling about this. We just have to keep moving forwards and trusting it. So is there any other things that you want to say, Shawn?
Just make informed decisions, do the research, and just every, what is it? Even the smallest person can change the course of the future.
It's true.
I think that's what she said.
It's true.
But, yeah, just make informed choices.
Yeah. That's very true. I think we'll end off there. All right, everyone, have a wonderful night. I hope that this has been informative for you. I know that I feel really great into looking towards the future, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Thank you so much for coming, Shawn.
Yeah.
And Namarie. Bye, everyone.